Hey everybody, Coach Mark here, and before I dive into today's topic, make sure to find me over on Instagram as Coach Mark Estrubio. Also, I offer one-to-one coaching. It's what I do full-time, and the odds are very good. I would love to work with you. With that being said, let's get into it. Can we just take a moment to admire this super cool title slide? So in today's video, I'm going to be talking about how to modify a program correctly to suit your own tastes. And I'm actually going to be using the venerated program by Mr. Alex Bromley himself, Bullmastiff, as my example. How this came to be is a while back on Reddit, a simple question came up. How do you go about modifying a program? So when it came time to answer this question, what I offered was that when it comes to changing programs at day's end, the outcome is to better tailor the program to the individual. Of course, you'll have the problem with perpetual late novice or lifetime intermediates. They have this trap where they feel they need to constantly tinker with the program as opposed to running it as is. But if we put aside that little trap, most people opt to tailor a program based upon the following things, which is individual needs, their own schedule, but above all else, personal tastes and preferences. Now, when it comes to modifying a program, I think at day's end, the reason we do it is to improve compliance, which is the most important variable in any sort of program. The best program on paper is absolutely worthless if you're not going to stick to it. Whereas a program that's maybe 70, 80% optimal, that you stick to religiously and attack with intensity, intent, and really kind of love that program, you're going to get a lot better results. I mean, you got to think about your desired outcome, right? Running Shako for a bodybuilder, for example, is probably not the wisest path forward, but let's say you do have a bodybuilder that wants to run Shako. We can see what it is about Shako that the bodybuilder finds compelling and then work backwards from there. Ultimately, training is about understanding principles are more important than methods. Progressive overload, sensible exercise selection, and compliance are all way more important than any specific set rep scheme. And if you can understand the key principles behind a program, you can then in turn make modifications to it because you'll understand what the author is trying to do, what are the key principles that drive that program to making it be effective. Now, before I go any further, let's just make this abundantly clear. Tons of credit is due here. Bullmastiff by Mr. Alex Bromley is one of the most popular programs I've seen, and for very good reason. It has a very fun main lift progression, and it's got a great track record for helping people add muscle and strength. Now, the reason I'm even talking about it in today's video is the program has been given out for free by Bromley himself, so I feel comfortable discussing it and sharing some of the nuance of it. Now, that being said, if I hear from him and he tells me to take down this video is gone. That's simple. Also, if you are a big fan of his, if you're new to the channel, please understand that this is a rewrite of the program to better suit my tastes and not in any way, shape, or form a critique or me saying that it's a bad program. It's quite the opposite. It's a phenomenal program. It's one that I like a lot. I would just want to tweak it so that I would get more joy out of it. If you've been at this for any amount of time, you've probably seen what Bullmastiff looks like, but just to speak on it in general terms, your main lift for 3 weeks, you're doing 4 sets of 6 with the final set being a rep out. The next 3 weeks is 4 sets of 5. Then the last 3 weeks will be 4 sets of 4 with a rep out on that final set. And depending on how many reps you attain in that final set, you would add a fixed amount of weight for the following week. There's a bit of a pseudo deload occurring in weeks 4 and 7 because your weeks 3 and 6 performance do not affect the weight done in weeks 4 and 7 because you are switching reps. Then after that, you have another developmental lift where it's, 3 sets of 12, 10, or 8, depending on where you are in the wave. And additionally, between, interwave, if it's, say, wave 1, week 2, then you're doing 4 sets of 10. And you can see I have that written out on screen right there. So if you look at overall, it's a pretty high volume program. And that's one of the key markers of Bullmastiff, is using a lot of bodybuilding type support to build a wider base of fitness to support higher peaks and performance on those big lifts. Also, as a quick side note here, I'm only talking about the base version of Bullmastiff today in the video. I won't be touching on the peak version, as I feel that that's just an entirely different can of worms and not the topic for today. So here's an example of what that program might look like. This would be week 3. So you got the 4x6 deads, the 5x12 stiff leg deads, so on and so forth. Week 1, there would have been 2 fewer sets on everything except for the main lift, which still would have been 4 sets of 6. So again, as you can see, quite a good bit of volume here. So now that we've talked a bit about Bullmastiff and kind of what a day looks like, here's how I would go about making the modification to better suit myself and my individual needs. First and foremost, Bullmastiff is what we call a square program. So all the lifts are programmed and treated the exact same in terms of overall volume and attention. And I personally need a lot more focus on my upper body, especially my pressing strength. And I've found that if I push deadlift and squat at the same time, I tend to fall apart. Additionally, the lower body rep ranges, for me, after doing something like 4x6 deads, I have absolutely zero desire to move on and do 5 sets of 12 on a stiff leg deadlift after that. Personally, I also want a bit more frequency. I would rather do a squat and a deadlift supplemental movement, and then on another day do the deadlift and then a squat supplemental movement, just so I can break up the movement pattern a little bit. I like that multi-touches throughout the week. I find it helps me out. Now, as far as the accessories go, I just want a simpler approach here. 3 sets of 12, 4 sets of 12, 5 sets of 12. Honestly, it's just kind of boring. I would sooner swap out a little bit of that volume for a bit more intensity. And then lastly, I want a bit more focus on my overhead press. So let's go ahead and move into how I might go about with my iteration of Bullmastiff. And also, just for the sake of simplicity, I'm not going to be doing any wild, crazy, novel progressions for the accessory movements, so you're not going to see anything new here. In fact, I'm actually using some progressions that all of you are probably very highly familiar with at this point in the game. And that program is going to be named Toro Askal, named for the indigenous street dogs of the Philippines. It mixes the approaches and methods, but it has Bullmastiff at the roots. I'm also going to be talking about the why of each modification, and as well as explaining how it remains true to the origins of Bullmastiff. First up is deadlift day. I'm actually going to keep this much like the original, except I'm going to drop 1 set. So 3 sets of 6 rather than 4 sets of 6, for example. Main change there is it's just going to be a minor volume reduction. And then after my deadlift, I'm going to move into a paused Zercher squat, and I'll probably just use something such as 5-3-1 here. This allows me that second weekly squatting variation rather than having that all condensed into one day. And I'm reducing volume overall, which again, I think for me makes a lot of sense, because if I'm going to be squatting and deadlifting fairly heavy in the same week, I need to be very mindful of these things. After that, I'll do a rest pause for the seal row, and I'm actually going to do 2 working rest pause sets here. So I'll do 1 rest pause set, drop the weight by 20%, do another rest pause set. Again, I'm swapping out volume for intensity, and on something like a seal row, I really like this approach because with a seal row, you're less likely to generate a lot of low back fatigue due to how you're supported. Now, if you look at the last 3 accessory movements here, I'm doing what's called the 350 approach. So in 3 sets, I want 50 or more total reps performed. So that could be 20, 15, 15. That would mean I satisfy the requirement. And I'm only taking about 90 seconds rest between sets. If you actually look at the total rep count, it is very in line with the original Bullmastiff. I'm just simplifying it, where instead of adding a set every single week, my goal will simply be to add reps or add load. Now, next up here is the push press day, and the biggest modification I'm going to make in terms of the main lift is rather than doing something like 4x6, 4x5, 4x4, I'm going to go 5x5, 6x4, and then 8x3, still using that last set as a rep out to anchor progression for the next week. Now, the reason why I'm doing it this way is on something like the axle or log push press, I want more first reps, because that's going to give me the opportunity to really dial in my technique, especially on the clean phase if I'm taking it from ground to overhead. After that, I'll move on to a dumbbell bench press as well as a machine shoulder press. And on both of these, I'm just doing 2 rest pause sets. Again, trading out volume for intensity. And then triceps, biceps, face pulls using the 350 approach. Next up is our squat day. Now, the movement that I opted for here is a front squat versus chains, and I'm going to do a 3-week step load of 6x5, 8x4, 10x3 at somewhere around 60, 65, and 70% of my 1 rep max at lockout. I probably want that to be roughly 10% in chain weight. I find that the front squat versus chains is one of those movements that I think just is all around great for a strongman athlete. It helps to build the deadlift, it helps improve the rack position, it helps improve leg strength, and also by deloading a little bit at the bottom, it's a little easier on the knees, the back, and the hips. And a strong, good rack position is going to carry over to everything. And all I'm going to do here is every 3 weeks, I'll add 5 to 10 pounds. I treat the squat as a glorified accessory for a lot of programming, especially in something such as this, where we are doing, 3 strenuous sets of deads with a rep out at the very end. After the front squat, we'll do some SSB good mornings. This is just a good all-around deadlift and squat developer. It also has the added benefit of really hammering torso strength, which is going to keep you from folding during moving events, keep you locked into place on a deadlift, especially if we are thinking about the yoke carry. I think the SSB Good Morning is one of the best supplemental movements you can be doing. Just 2 hard sets of 10 to 12 reps, big volume drop. But if you think about it, this is coming after the deadlift day and after the push press day. And then we've already done front squats versus chains today. So there's a lot of residual fatigue at this point in the game. When you do think about writing a program, you want to think about the person a few days into it, a few cycles into it, rather than just saying, oh, this looks good on paper. Think about the lifter who's going to be in the middle of it all. Then after that, we'll do the 2 rest pause approach for a leg press. Probably do a deadlift stance leg press as well, just to help get a little more transference specificity. And then we're going to go leg curls, back extensions, and some sort of shrug using the 350 approach. And with the shrug, if we're doing that strapless, that's going to also be a really good grip developer. Alrighty, we're now at our 4th and final day of the training week, which is our static pressing day. In the traditional Bullmastiff, this would be a bench press day, but as I talked about earlier, I want a bit more focus on overhead pressing. So we're going to be doing the seated behind the neck press, and we're actually just going to run this one straight up vanilla Mastiff approach. Reason being, the seated BTN press needs a lot of reps and a lot of volume for you to really improve. But what's nice about it is I find it's almost like pressing in a Smith machine, so it's a very stable position so you can grind out those tougher reps. Then after that, we'll move into a floor press variation using 5-3-1 or maybe those 2 rest pause sets, just depends on what I'm looking for. And this is triceps, triceps, triceps. Additionally, I like the idea of a floor press here after the BTN press. Because the BTN is an extended range of motion and a position that a lot of us probably aren't the most comfortable in, it's then nice to move into a partial range of motion, and the floor press is just going to help us really overload our triceps. Then after that, we got rear delt swings, triceps, biceps, and face pulls. And with all that, we're just using that 350 approach once more to help get a lot of volume in, good bit of work density, but reducing the overall amount of time spent in the workout. Just that slight intensity bump. Again, very similar to the original Bullmastiff. Alrighty, so in conclusion, I think Toro Askal would be a really fun program to run. It does adhere a lot to those key principles of Bullmastiff, which is just building your overall strength on the big 4. In this case, it's more like the big 3.5 because we have a push press and a static press, and a big use of bodybuilding work to drive muscle mass to support a bigger peak on the main lifts. Again, this is just how I would adjust it to suit my own individual tastes. Something I might even consider doing is making a conjugate, wherein we would use the 3-set Mastiff approach for 3 weeks at a time. First 3 weeks might be an axle deadlift, then we go to a deficit deadlift, and then the last 3-week wave might be the standard deadlift from the floor. Just one possible way to play with it. Again, when it comes to modifying programs, what we want to think about is why are we doing it? Are we doing it to chase something optimal, or is it to better increase our long-term compliance so we can extract more benefit from it? Anyways, I hope you folks found this useful. Make sure to let me know if you have any comments or questions down below. The best comments and questions are ones I will turn into topic videos, and I will catch you in the next video.